So forget bragging rights, everybody. This is about raw power. Because when Canada ranks #1 in the world and the US gets humiliated and drops out of the top 20, that doesn't just hurt their feelings, it changes the entire balance of this trade war.
Yep, the data is in. The Reputation Institute, a research firm with offices in Boston and Copenhagen, they released its latest report where they looked at 55 nations on stability, safety, and government competence.
The result? Canada takes first place, the gold medal. And the United States? Well, they didn't just lose. They crashed and fell out of the top 20 for global reputation.
Washington is rattled. Trump is trying to bully us into submission, but he's missing the massive shift happening right under his nose. Canada suddenly holds all the leverage.
By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how Canada can use this ranking as a weapon in this trade fight with Trump. Because while Trump is busy acting like a bargain bin dictator, turning allies into enemies and threatening to dig through our digital lives, Canada is quietly securing the one thing he's losing fast: global trust.
This is the story the Trump inner circle is terrified you'll find out, because when you are in a high-stakes fight with a superpower and they treat you like a vassal state, this reputation isn't just a trophy, it's a shield.
And we're going to show you exactly why the U.S. national security strategy is panic spiraling over this shift and how Canada is turning a popularity contest into a hard power weapon. So let's get into it.
First, let's look at the last 12 months. Canada has been modernizing faster than at any point since the Cold War. We're replacing aging fighter jets, reshaping our Navy, expanding Arctic security, upgrading missile defense, and pushing forward with what the U.S. thought would never happen: our own independent procurement path.
The Gripen announcement rattled them, because nobody expected Canada to seriously consider a jet that breaks the 50-year dependency on U.S. systems. And the second we did, American defense circles lit up. Because the moment Canada stops buying America by default, billions shift, and so does influence.
Same thing with submarines. Ottawa isn't just browsing brochures. We're evaluating real proposals. And one of the strongest comes from South Korea, which is offering Canada advanced KSS-3 submarines with air-independent propulsion and long-endurance systems built for cold water operation. They've even floated the idea of joint production in Canadian shipyards.
And that matters because it gives Canada something we've never had before: a credible, non-US, under-ice capable submarine option. The kind Australia is chasing, except without a 20-year waiting period or American veto power over how we use the fleet.
And that's the bigger point. Canada is finally getting serious about the Arctic, not as an offshoot of U.S. strategy, but as a sovereign northern power with its own surveillance, its own deterrence, and its own long-term plan for continental defense.
And it's not just South Korea. Canada is in a completely new era of submarine shopping. We're talking to Japan about the Taige class, to France about the Barracuda and Skorpen lines, to Germany about their advanced AIP fleets, and even to Sweden about their next generation A-26.
And do you notice who's not on that list, Dave? The United States. Because they only build nuclear subs, and even if we wanted them, Washington would still try to decide how and where Canada uses them.
These new conversations change that. They give Canada real choices, real sovereignty. If we pick South Korea, Japan, France, Germany, or Sweden, we get under-ice capability without asking Washington for permission.
And Trump knows it. The second Canada modernizes its submarine fleet with independent partners, the U.S. loses one of its quiet pressure points: control over our Arctic surveillance.
Which is exactly why this matters. Canada isn't just admired, we're becoming strategically independent. And that drives Trump absolutely crazy.
And add in the SAFE agreement with Europe. Canada's stepping in where the U.S. keeps stumbling. Our role in stabilizing transatlantic defense, supplying ammunition, training partners, and supporting Ukraine has been noticed. Europeans see Canada as reliable when the White House definitely isn't.
If you put that all together, then you get the real reason that Trump lashes out. Because Canada is rising economically, diplomatically, and militarily, while the U.S., under his leadership, is losing partners, losing trust, and losing its grip on the alliances it used to take for granted.
And when a superpower starts slipping, the last thing its leader wants to see is the quiet neighbor next door climbing the rankings, modernizing its forces, and building trade deals around the world.
Let's bring in another piece of data that directly connects to Trump's second term and the current trade fight.
Yep, in November 2025, Ipsos released a major poll for the Halifax International Security Forum. They asked over 23,000 people in 30 countries which nations they expect to have a positive influence on world affairs over the next decade.
On average, 80% of people said Canada will have a positive impact. That's the highest score of any country. By comparison, only 46% on average said the United States will have a positive influence. That's a drop of 13 points in a single year, and is tied directly to the first year of Trump's second term.
Ipsos explicitly calls it Trump Slump 2.0. The same thing happened in 2017 after his first win, and in 2025, it's even worse. The US is now sitting closer to India, China, and other emerging powers than it is to Canada or great nations in the European Union.
And it gets more interesting when you look at how people feel about their own countries. 83% of Canadians think Canada will have a positive impact on the world in the next decade. In the US, only 68% of Americans feel that way about their own country, and that number is dropping fast.
Then there's the trust question. Who do people see as the most reliable leader for democratic nations? Globally, the share of people picking the US has dropped 9 points to just 46%. Among Canadians, it's plunged even more, 19 points down to just 23%.
We are now the least likely nation out of all 30 surveyed to see the US as the reliable leader of the democratic world.
So when Trump stands up and insists that America still leads the free world, the actual data says something entirely different.
So on one side, you have the US, dropping out of the global top 20 for reputation, sliding down influence rankings, and losing trust as a democratic leader.
On the other side, you have Canada, ranked #1 in the world for overall reputation, leading global influence polls, and seen as a country that will have a positive impact over the next decade.
And that gap really matters when we talk about fighting the US, not militarily, but politically, economically, and diplomatically.
When Trump slaps illegal tariffs on Canadian goods, we're not alone at the negotiating table. We're standing there as a country that other nations actually want to work with. And he's standing there from a country people no longer trust.
And that's why reputation matters. If your military is modernizing, your alliances are expanding, and your global reputation is #1, you don't walk into negotiations with the United States intimidated.
No, you walk in knowing the rest of the world is watching how the US treats you.
The security strategy flat out admits the US is losing influence. It warns that partners are realigning economically, that America's reliability is in question, and that competitors are stepping into the vacuum created by his chaotic leadership.
And who's suddenly being treated as a dependable partner by the rest of the world? Canada. The same report notes that countries are strengthening ties with stable, democratic states, and that is diplomatic code for countries that are not run by someone who eats McDonald's, wears a diaper, and dances to YMCA while publicly attacking their allies.
So when Trump lashes out at Canada, it's not confidence, it's insecurity. He sees the neighbors succeeding in areas where the US is sliding. Global trust, alliances, economic stability, and he reacts the only way he knows how: hostility.
The same report points out that this is not an accident either. The US being pushed out of the top tier is directly linked to how the world sees Donald Trump and his policies.
And that matters, because when Trump threatens Canada with illegal tariffs, or tells us that we're freeloading on defense, or hints that we should be grateful to become the 51st state, he's not speaking from a position of global respect. He's speaking from a country whose reputation has collapsed.
Canada, on the other hand, just gained more leverage. When we stand up for ourselves, we're not some small neighbor mouthing off. Nope. We're the #1 country in the world on how people feel about safety, stability, and quality of life.
And here's the part some Americans never understand. Being small is not a disadvantage. Some of the most capable, respected, and strategically important countries on the planet are small. Look at Norway, Denmark, Sweden. None of them have massive populations, but all of them punch far above their weight because they invest in smart defense, strong diplomacy, and real partnerships.
So true. Those countries aren't global giants, they're global anchors. They stabilize regions, drive innovation, lead humanitarian work, and shape NATO strategy.
And that's the lane that Canada is stepping into, not trying to be the United States, but becoming a country with real influence, the kind other nations trust in a crisis.
We're finally acting like a northern nation with its own agenda, its own alliances, and its own reputation to protect.
And here's the other important piece. This isn't a one-off win. Canada's reputation didn't spike in 2025 because we had a good month. This is a long-term pattern.
Yeah, back in 2015, CBC reported on the same Reputation Institute rankings, and that year, Canada was once again #1 in the world for reputation. It was the 4th time in 6 years that we took the top spot.
The head of research at the time, Brad Heck, told Forbes that Canada is consistently seen as a great place to live. It was also seen as a very attractive place for tourism, ranking high in effective government, appealing environment, advanced economy, and Canada, they keep hitting all 3 of those.
Fast forward to 2025, and that pattern not only holds there, but in another ranking summarized by Visual Capitalist at the end of October, it once again showed Canada at the top for global reputation, tied with Switzerland. It was a different poll, but the same conclusion. Canada is consistently grouped with the most trusted, respected, and stable countries on Earth. And that is not an accident.
The other part of this story is actually internal. Canadians are famously hard on ourselves. The Reputation Institute's earlier survey showed that Canadians rated our own reputation lower than the rest of the world did. We're quick to point out our flaws. That's Canadian. And you know what? We should, because it's actually healthy. We need to be critical of our problems and issues. That's the only way we move forward and progress.
And that's the thing about Canadians. We don't fool ourselves. We don't pretend everything's perfect. When we get something wrong, we say it out loud. We apologize, and we work on fixing it. That's part of our national DNA, owning the hard truths instead of burying them.
But we can hold 2 things at once. Canada has real work to do at home on Indigenous reconciliation, inequality, climate, making healthcare better, while also understanding that globally, we are in a much stronger position than we give ourselves credit for.
We're a country that can acknowledge our failures without losing sight of our strengths. And that balance is exactly why the world trusts us more than we trust ourselves.
The world sees Canada as a country worth admiring, a country they would live in, a country they would trust with their students, their investments, and their alliances.
Well, they just have to learn to survive the winters first.
Well, that's very true. Global admiration is one thing, but making it to February without questioning all your life choices, that's the real citizenship test.
And that perception has survived a recession, a pandemic, and now a very openly hostile neighbor.
So what do we do with that? How does being #1 in reputation actually help us when Trump is threatening our own economy?
Well, first, this gives us leverage with trade. When Canada signs deals with Europe, the Indo-Pacific, with Latin America, those partners aren't just crunching numbers. They're asking, who do we rely on when things get messy?
The Reputation Institute and Ipsos data both say the same thing. Countries trust us. They think we will do what we say, honor our agreements, and not weaponize everything for domestic politics.
And it helps us attract talent and capital. If you're a skilled worker deciding where to move your family, you look at healthcare, safety, education, stability, and Canada checks all those boxes. The US under Trump, it doesn't.
And this moment should give Canadians confidence. When we push back against Trump's tariffs, when we diversify our trade, when we assert our sovereignty, we're not punching above our weight. We're acting exactly like the country the world already believes we are.
So here's our takeaway. The data is clear. The Reputation Institute's 2025 report puts Canada at the top for the world reputation, and the US, they don't even crack the top 20. Earlier rankings have showed that we have held this ground for years, and other polls confirm that global opinion expects Canada, not the US, to have a more positive influence in the decade ahead.
So remember, when Trump threatens us, he's speaking from a country whose standing has collapsed. We're speaking from a country the world still trusts.
And that's why Canada will be okay. More than okay. We're going to come out of this decade stronger, more independent, and more important to the rest of the world than ever.
Now, we know that we have a big fight ahead of us, and it's not going to be easy, but we're going in with our eyes wide open and our elbows up. What's Trump doing? Well, he's holding another rally in front of 200 paid extras to feed his ego. Canada's winning, and MAGA is losing steam.
So let us know what you think in the comments. Do you think these rankings get it right about Canada? And what do you think they missed? Do you think the USA has fallen right off the global reputation scale?
Because a strong reputation isn't the same as a perfect country. We can celebrate this and still push for better.
And if you're watching from outside Canada, tell us how our country looks from where you are. Would you live here? Cold weather and all?
And thanks for watching, and remember, Canada is #1 in the world right now, so let's live up to it.
And let's make sure Trump never forgets it, so be sure to share this video with someone who still thinks the USA is a powerhouse. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and click on that bell so you get notifications, because we bring you the best and worst of politics every day.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.